next speaker is Jonathan Dayan, and he's speaking on Reimagining the College on the Hill, the history of the Black working class at Connecticut College. So looking at the city from a little bit of a different perch. Let's
Thank you, everybody. So, I'm just going to do this because I will also talk if I'm not silent, as people who know me. Okay. So, first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming today. I'm a senior here at Conn, a history student, and I really want to thank my friends, family, professors, everyone in the history department. You've all had a great influence on me, both as a historian and as a person. I'd like to thank everyone in the archives who were instrumental in helping me with this project and who are here today. And also this cohort I worked with, it was really great, being able to go through this with you guys, and there's no place I'd rather be than right here, right now. So thank you all. So my thesis, Reimagining the College on the Hill, History of the Black Working Class, Connecticut College. So what does that mean? So my kind of question revolves around how does understanding Conn, this place we all inhabit, as a historically white serving institution, influence the lived experience of the Black working class? So the way I tackle that question is by arguing that since its inception, Connecticut College was structurally created to predominantly serve elite white women. For those of you who don't know, Connecticut College started as a women's college before we went co-ed in the 70s. And part of that story of serving women involved Black labor. So currently, our institution, when comparing Conn to other schools, there are a lot of other places that really drive home their history, and that's not something I feel like Conn really does in its marketing. The only reference there really is we're here because we almost weren't. So Connecticut College exists today because Wesleyan banned women from attending, and we were created as a response to that because there was nowhere in the state for women to get a college education. And that's not really part of our understanding of ourselves. And I kind of wanted to look at, we are here because we almost weren't, but who are the stories we left behind, right? So there's that progressive mission, but there's more. And part of that story was telling the story of Black labor at Connecticut College. So many elite institutions, not just Conn, relied on domestic servants to clean the rooms of students. So at Connecticut College, every dorm had live-in maids. So daily, a student would expect their room to be cleaned. Weekly, their sheets would be changed by folks who lived and worked at this place in the dorms we inhabit today. And I argue that our school's kind of founding curriculum reflects that expectation that someone's going to come and clean your room. Because the training that these folks were getting, the early women at Connecticut College, they were not being trained to be domestic servants. They were being trained to become secretaries, doctors, professionals. And there's all this talk at Conn in the early days around vocational training, but none of those vocations were the work these people were doing, right? And I also argue that that model that Conn put forward, while gave access to women, was not accessible to most women and most Black working class women. And that reality is reflected in how labor worked at Connecticut College. So this is one of the only pictures that exists of domestic workers at the college. So since its founding, Connecticut College employed Black couples to live and work in dormitories. That practice continued into the 50s. So those folks, when I first found this photo, this is why I started this project, because someone showed me this photo. And when I first started this project, no one really knew, there were only first names in the caption. I was able to uncover more of their names and more about their lives and more stories. And this kind of practice, this wider story of domestic labor, kind of shows how colleges I named it the College on the Hill because there's like this idea that we're disconnected from New London, both like physically and with privilege and prestige. And that's also not true. Like Neil was saying, the people who work here live in New London. So how are we the College on the Hill? And this story is told in the context of the Great Migration, more folks coming, and the college took advantage of that. And you see this advertisement in the day here, explicitly advertised for black couples to work in these domestic roles. And while there were white maids and janitors who lived at the college too, the goal was pretty clear that each dormitory they expected to have a couple work. And I kind of realized in telling these stories, domestic service was never really as prevalent here as other colleges. This whole area is really understudied. Like, labor historians don't really think of a college as a place to work. They think of it as a place to study. So I found a few theses that students had wrote about employees, and one of them said Wellesley had 250 maids living on campus. Like, living on campus and working. Conn at its peak had like 3 dozen. And in realizing that, I saw how personal these stories were at that intersection of race and community, and the fact that there were so few folks who actually worked here. So I didn't want to write that chapter on employees by just saying this is what it was like. The way I wrote that chapter was through individual stories. So each section of that chapter looks at a different decade through a different couple who worked here in that decade, through their kind of like ancestry stories. And some of those folks you can see here. So on the left there is Mildred Reed. She was also worked here for a long time. She was a white employee who lived off campus. Then there's William Rollins, Ruth Leakes, Lemuel Payne, and Helen Rollins. They're all being rewarded in the 50s for their long service at the college. And I also made sure and made clear in my thesis that you can't define any of these stories of any employee by the fact that there was oppression here. At certain times, all of these folks also lived off campus and lived on campus and made community in New London. So this place should not define any of their stories, while we should be acknowledged. And that brought me to the story of Lois Taylor, Conn's first black graduate. So if you've seen this photo, if you recognize it, that's probably because it's currently hanging in Fanning Hall. And you might pass it if you've recognized it. And I had heard rumors from folks in the archives that her mom might have worked at the college as a maid, and that's kind of what brought me to her story. What I ended up realizing was her mom worked for a professor here, so not that direct connection. But that also, it kind of made me realize, like, what was it like for a black working class New Londoner to experience this place, which I established much clearer in my thesis was an elite white space. What was it like? Because Lois Taylor was the first black graduate of this school, came from New London, had all those connections to the local black community that all of these folks also had. But she inhabited a different space. She was a student, right? There's some authority that comes with a student over an employee. So I looked at her experience. And in that chapter, I talk about her time coming to New London. So the first black graduate of Conn, Lois Taylor, was able to attend here because Colin Buell, who was also on the board when Neil was talking about, he was the principal of the Williams School. So the one that is now on campus, like right over there, it used to be downtown. And they raised money so she could go there. And Taylor attended. She commuted from home. And I talk a lot about her story, both at Conn and beyond, because I think it's really important to emphasize none of these people are defined by this place. But it also was a history that happened. So Taylor also did a lot after graduating. So a lot of this chapter I was able to get in touch with her niece, who still lives locally, who I interviewed for this chapter. And I also found a lot of stuff online. Like Neil, this project was not possible 3 years ago before stuff was digitized. So I actually encourage folks, there's so much that's there now that we haven't looked at. And looking at her story beyond, she ended up writing a thesis about domestic workers in New York City, black domestic workers, and kind of thinking like, what would it be like to inhabit, like to come to a campus where the only folks who look like you, people you probably know who are part of your community, are cleaning people's rooms, right? And just the emotion of that. And Taylor was never interviewed by the college. She came back and did a class in the 70s. Was never interviewed then. So the real like remnants of her story, from what I can tell, obviously there's more to be done, I got from her niece. And I kind of want to ask you guys all today, what do we as an institution want to do with this information? So I want to thank my friend David for showing me this article yesterday. So this was published 5 days ago. Bryn Mawr just opened this monument to both black employees and the first black student of the college. This was just commemorated 2 weeks ago, right? And it asked, so each of these papers have names of influential, of college employees, and the whole distance of this knot tying those stories together is supposed to represent how far the first black graduate had to walk, because she wanted to live on campus and wasn't allowed because the president was a segregationist. So I want to ask you guys today, how do we as an institution and as individuals want to remember this story? I, for one, have had a fantastic, life-changing experience at Conn. That is not the experience of everybody, especially for students of color. And that feeling of unbelonging is reflected of the history of colleges, not just like Conn, but a lot of other places. And that is a history that these institutions have not yet addressed. And I really want to emphasize that remembering our past is a critical first step in changing that reality. So everyone can feel like they feel seen at this institution, and everyone can feel like they belong. So I want to thank you guys all for coming.
Leverage history like manifests and find ways to show up in the way that our college structures the experience of our students' club.
In the present.
Right.
Is this for all?
I think it's wrong.
Those who are
Well, I have something to start. So one of the lines in my thesis, so I found an article in the college newspaper. Basically, it's like these students are about to graduate. This is in the 30s. They're about to graduate, and the joke article. It's really weird. They're like prophesizing on like what their future is going to be. And one of the students, their prophecy was that because of their relationship with Lemuel Payne and Carrie Marr Payne, 2 employees at the college, it says this: because of my friendship with Payne and Karma, all of the black children that I'm going to go teach are going to love me. It says basically. I didn't quote that directly, and I think we really need to, and this is for all institutions, I think that the fact that these places see helping people as a career booster is disgusting. And it really needs to inform, the work an institution does with its community. What's the primary goal? Helping or getting something to put on someone's resume? That's not something I feel like schools address enough. And it was still an issue 100 years ago.
Okay, well, let's one final round of applause.